Based on who?
Welcome back. Blake Cousins, Special Report, Third Phase of Moon. Dr. J explores the mind of Foster Gamble, writer, producer, known for the movies seen worldwide by millions, Thrive. Listen to this incredible segment from Dr. J. Andy Elias's radio show.
How did humanity get into this mess with so many different problems facing us, just at a time when I thought humanity was really waking up and was in fact going to be thriving? When I graduated from college, I thought, it'd be just a few years before we're going to handle war and the environment, and, we would be thriving on a healthy planet. And it's gone quite the opposite way. And I was so distressed over seeing that's when I dedicated myself and my time and resources to figuring out what is in the way of our thriving.
Energy companies have been sitting on these free energy devices for a minimum of 2 decades, and that is the sole reason they are hiding everything from. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, there certainly seems to be increasing evidence for it. Ben Rich, the CEO of Skunkworks, when he retired, basically let people know that we have the energy to return ET home, and that the dark projects are 50 to 100 years ahead of what the public knows about. Now that's a very authoritative source. And then people like Tom Bearden, who is an incredible free energy inventor who was in military intelligence for a long time. He's also at great risk to his own life, disclosed a tremendous amount about what has been in those projects for a long time. So, when it comes to free energy, and this is a field I've been in for 15 years, it's not really that much a technical problem anymore. Tesla was accessing it 100 years ago, and the dark projects probably have had it for 50, 60 years. It's more of a political issue. It's more of an economic issue. It's a matter of getting the truth out and then holding the individuals accountable who are hiding behind government, military, and corporate institutions. Hold them personally liable for shutting down, over 5,000 inventors and withholding this critical information from the public. Now, you talk about, in the interest of national security, which is the excuse they use a lot of times to shut this down. In the interest of national security, these things need to be released, and right away, so that we don't have to be polluting the skies, giving children asthma, and fighting over other people's oil.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because this Bearden might be the name of the fellow that you had in Thrive, but like you said, there have been over 5,000 patents that have been suppressed that could have solved all our problems. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Bearden who was suppressed right before he was supposed to give a presentation with his device to the UN and the US Senate by, of course, no other than George Herbert Walker Bush. What about Tesla? Tesla had all these visions, and only now, 100 years after he was talking about the alternating current, are we using it? And yet he was suppressed at the time for the AC in favor of Edison's direct current. And now, of course, we're using the alternating current. Same thing with his Tesla coils. He was suppressed with, the free energy devices. Do you think that it was essentially passed down to our ancestors, or was it just kind of shown to us by these visitors?
Well, I think it was a combination. I think that the knowledge came from off-planet, and that was either beings actually coming here and setting up civilizations, interbreeding with whatever, ape species, human species, or whatever was evolving. And I think that as well, there have always been mystics who could tap into this field of the Akashic records, that some of them call it, or the cosmic oracle, just this field of knowledge that is there as patterns of information. And if we just learn to tune our antennas and understand the download, it will come. And I think that one of the reasons why there was such an increase in the appearance of UFOs and ETs starting in 1947 was that once human beings had learned how to make an atomic bomb, then our very survival and the survival of the planet itself was really at risk. And so I think, as I said in the movie, that more conscious beings, more advanced beings, have either shown themselves more or come back from elsewhere to help us. Like a parent would help a toddler climb a jungle gym, where they have to do it themselves, but you're there to help catch them if they fall and to give them some tips now and then. And I think to a great degree, they are showing us, first of all, simply how to relate to energy without blowing ourselves up. And then as we understand that, what I'm seeing that it leads to, having had many years of conversations with people like Stephen Greer and James Gilliland and Lane Andrews and others who have had these experiences, Nassim, of going on ships, meeting these beings, and a number of them having been shown the drive on the ship. And so I got to talk to a number of them as we were filming in Thrive, most of whom had never had contact with each other. And they were all describing essentially the same double torus dynamic with a crystalline center as the drive on the ship. And that would have, sounded crazy to me, just like science fiction, except that I had been studying for 30 years the geometry by which life, forms matter. And what they were describing was the double torus dynamic with the vector equilibrium crystal, which is exactly how nature builds a sustainable system, is with a combination of those two things. So the notion that there are intelligences who are traveling, many of them metaphysically, but many of them physically as well, that they're traveling with ships and other beings through the universe, tells me that they're not burning Exxon along the way. They're not taking 30,000 years to get here from the nearest star. They obviously are accessing energy wherever they are, and they're obviously bending time and space if they're actually traveling from other solar systems, much less other galaxies. And so that really interested me for a long time, and those two pieces finally came together, the free energy piece, the suppression of free energy and the suppression of UFOs. As Adam Trombley says in our film, the two of them go hand in hand, because if the free energy technology were to be known, or let's say if the ET presence was to be acknowledged, the next thing that the public is going to be asking is, how the heck did they get here? And that's going to lift the lid on all these free energy technologies which have been developed, but then put under wraps in these black ops projects and so forth. So for me, all of a sudden it all came together, in that if you access energy by recognizing the toroidal pattern is the foundation of a healthy system, and you create your own, you actually create your own mini black hole, then you are actually accessing the energy of the universe, just the way the black hole centering every galaxy does, but also you're creating your own gravitational field around you and the ship. And that all of a sudden explains how these ships can travel, from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in an instant, and then turn at acute angles. Obviously that would crush any of us against the side of the ship. So they have to be in a different field. It's like if you're traveling along the freeway with the windows up in a car, and you throw a tennis ball up in the air, it's going to come down in your hand. Because you're carrying along the airfield inside there. But if you go out the window and throw it up, the wind's going to make it go backwards. So all of a sudden there was an explanation that fit in with this fundamental patterning of how people could alter time and space, access energy anywhere, and still remain safe while they're traveling interdimensionally.
And I love that you mentioned that, because I think you're absolutely right the way they travel. First of all, they're not burning Exxon or Mobil or ConocoPhillips fuel or anything else along those lines. And it doesn't seem to me that they're going from a straight line. It seems that obviously there's another field at play, as you mentioned. And when people talk about USOs, unidentified submerged objects, or essentially it just changed the name from UFO to USO when it goes underwater, they talk about them going supersonic speeds, which would be physically impossible unless, of course, the water is not touching the ship.
Exactly.
Now, going back to comment you made, and then we'll come right back to to the brain power. I wanted to go to that. But when we talked about the nukes, I think you are also dead on. We, as a society, we discover how to split the atom. What is the first thing we do? Not figure out a way how to power homes or submarines, which we ultimately did. We built a weapon of mass destruction. And then, of course, you have 40, 50 years later, Dave Jacobs, I believe he was one of the people you interviewed, who was at Air Force Base here in California when a rocket was fired that had a nuclear missile. It was supposed to have one, at least a test, and yet a saucer came in and sort of shot it out of the sky, which proves to me that they're worrying about us. But at the same time, though, we let off 2 bombs in Japan, not to mention all the tests. Do you think there's a reason why they didn't intercept those as they did down the line?
Well, I don't know how much attention they had on that. That's why I said in 1947 they really started paying attention, and there haven't been any, actual, death and destruction bombs set off since that time. There's another person, I can't remember his name right now, who was at a military base when a UFO came in, and they were doing some kind of test, and they had activated all the nuclear silos.